Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really same story. Mm-hmm. 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 So, if you ever actually want me to recount what I just actually heard, this, in the first place, it was started from the New York Times report. I've already actually mentioned about the Ivanka Trump's consulting fee. But, there are a new development, because this gets really serious as the New York District office truly takes over the case to finally surface Ivanka Trump's name in the official investigation, right? So this is really a write-off. That means they just really want to avoid a tax burden. Simply wanted to obtain any type of deductions by hiring Ivanka Trump as an external consulting company. So this, according to the New York Times reporting, this is really in the range of 26 million. But the problem is that Ivanka Trump was allegedly reported to have obtained $747,000. But that was actually supposed to be given to irrelevant companies working outside the Trump organization. But when Ivanka Trump was inside the Trump entity, either she was actually on the payroll she was on the payroll of the Trump International, where she was actually connected to the White House, as she literally took over an official role in the White House. So there are conflicting issues. She should have never been part of both of them to be scouted as an external consulting firm's operator. In that way, the tax deduction can be justified. But Donald Trump's company truly wrongfully marked off the tax deduction form in order to evade greater sum of a tax obligation. That's what has been said. And there are multiple investigations going on in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. First, it's really the criminal inquiry. There are allegations connected to tax evasions and insurance fraud and the scheme certification fraud. And these are really likely to be the plots conspired by the Donald Trump's accountants and the tax law attorneys to minimize any burdens imposed on Donald Trump's company. This is estimated to be multi-millions for sure, according to the actual report by the CNN reporter, right? So this is a write-off. Tax write-off, literally, you just really want to minimize any type of elaborate sum of taxes by finding a loophole or truly seeking any type of illegal venues. In that way, you just really don't need to pay off all the money. You just cross them out. That's the quickest way to evade any burdens, right? This is a willful disobedience for sure. So, according to their estimation, the first, at a criminal level, there are tax avoidance and tax fraud. They just simply actually wanted to lower the amount of money they should pay out, and also the insurance of fraud. Maybe actually, extending the coverage in order to obtain the greatest money, meanwhile suppressing any type of burdens they need to pay either in a form of premiums or even in a fines. In the occurrence of uneventful happenings. And there are, certain certification issues that might actually also be connected to fraudulent efforts. That's what she said, I'm not lying. If you ever really want to know deeper into that, you need to actually grab a New York Times, because they already in the first place delved into the story with the depth for sure. Everything actually, has begun with the New York Times in-depth scrutiny. That's really the investigative journalism's power, which eventually motivated this, whole Manhattan prosecutor's office to mobilize their manpower to bring this investigation forward, right? The second one is, it's also the very tactics frequently used by Donald Trump's international organization in order to inflate the asset's value. There had been certain claims Donald Trump defrauded investors and the stockholders and outsourced workers and any type of contractors who might actually be engaged with the construction projects of his company, because he actually dropped the falsified arguments to simply pull the wool over the eyes of investors or shareholders, stockholders, or participants, or relevant folks. And this would also be another, fraudulent scheme. Because Donald Trump is under suspicion of inflating and multiplying the value of assets. There's the exaggeration of the total assets of his wealth, as well as his business perspective and a prospectus. And these are all now being investigated because there are certain tangible evidence that could actually press charges on him because of this, criminalized behaviors that could be penalized and punishable, for sure. Following from these news, Donald Trump International Organization's public attorney Alan Garton, who's been in charge of the financial treasury representatives also, he says that there is nothing wrong. Simply, in a nutshell, there is no illegal handling because they've been actually following every possible procedure with rigor. They've been actually so far, the actual corporate entity in connection with the Donald Trump's business affiliation, it has been very truthful to live up to the obligations imposed on them. The individuals related to the group. There were some players like Ivanka Trump or the rest of the people who've been part of the Trump International. They've been very committed to keeping the law, keeping the faith with the law. And there is no undue burden created by this type of negligence. As far as they've been concerned, that's what has been said. And Ivanka Trump, she actually never really officially comes out to respond to this so far. But she just actually dropped a Twitter message saying that, this is 100% pure and simple. Because, this type of investigation has been going on for a while. This has a certain sentiment of a retribution. And, there was nothing, concrete enough to prosecute Trump and his children, basically. So she's been actually very frustrated to see this, but she actually downplays the gravity of this investigation, saying that there is nothing that might actually be that culpable, because, this has been actually on for years, but nothing substantial has ever been done. So this could be another fluke. So no substance or no content in it. Maybe this is really kind of a political retribution, or this could actually have another ulterior motives. Maybe. Given the fact that this whole investigation is really under the leadership of the New York District Attorney, or the prosecutor at the Manhattan District. So it could actually be politicized also. Because, ever since Donald Trump was sworn into the office, the rest of prosecutors, including the district attorney in Manhattan, they were very, very hopped up to spot any unlawful activities by the Trump organization. That's true. So, what? You should actually break this down into multiple efforts by the same office in Manhattan. Either it would actually be criminal, or it could also be liable in the sense of the civil law violation. Because, it's just another, because, in the first place, Donald Trump breached the laws in order to gain profits by seeking a leeway. That's an issue in the form of tax evasion and tax avoidance. There are multiple traces that clearly substantiate his efforts to evade and dodge tax obligations. And one of the main issues is the Ivanka Trump's consulting fee that she actually obtained was exactly on the list of their tax filing to obtain the tax deduction. But this tax deduction can only be justified when Soren Company would hire external, independent, non-affiliated consulting firms or agencies. However, Ivanka Trump at the time was pretty much present in and outside the White House, and she was also been part of the Trump organization. So there was no chance, this type of tax deduction can be justified. Meanwhile, Donald Trump was sufficiently paying back to his daughter. So it's a really kind of win-win condition for Ivanka Trump and Donald Trump, but it's a really losing game for the United States, because the taxpayers' money was wasted just simply to enrich the wallets of Donald Trump's children, right? And there are also, insurance fraud indicated, because Donald Trump really wants to minimize the coverage of the payback, and he just really, in case of accidents. Meanwhile, he just wants to claim the greatest rewards and indemnification. That was another issue dropped here. And there are other certification schemes, There are really the rubber-stamped approvals handed out from Donald Trump's company in connection with the White House. And there are multiple issues. But she didn't actually, itemize everything. So if I ever actually really want to know in a detailed way, I have to actually go to NewYorkTimes.com to check out the details for sure. But the thing is, this is also, this is on the borderline of the criminal and the civil law, because, Donald Trump had, wasted his saliva and a breath to simply overestimate the assets of his. He actually advertised the seriousness of his business. That would not actually reflect the current address of his. So many of investors or shareholders or buyers or affiliated allies could actually be deceived in a possible sense. Because he actually, was already blamed for abusing his power to scout more buyers and investors based upon the speculation. This is really a definition of the fraud. So, he was already accused of having defrauded many of the people in his business orbit by inflating the actual value of assets. That's what has been said. His wealth has been significantly multiplied within the couple of years, but this could have been nothing but a husk. It's a really kind of empty shell if you ever look deeper into it, because this was actually built up on the credit. He actually, extended his credit. He took out a loan, and just simply actually, amplified the estimation of his wealth to recruit more and more investors. But nothing could actually be substantiated. That's what has been said, and I have nothing that I found very difficult. By the way, she didn't actually say that, but this is likely to be the Southern District in the New York City, who's a district attorney, would likely to wield a gavel. Not really wield a gavel. I would rather not say that. It's really bizarre. Because normally when we say the wield a gavel, this is really for a judge. Right. The Manhattan District Attorney is a person at the helm who could actually conduct a probe into the financial stability of the Trump organization. And that's what has been so far mentioned by her. And I think I didn't actually omit any of them. It's not really that difficult story. But what's been so important is really the directions of this ongoing investigation. If this current district attorney's inquiry into Donald Trump's criminal behaviors could catch on fire by actually finding substantial and admissible evidence to the core, then this will be definitely gaining traction to be serious, right? Because this is the first time, and it has its meaning, because no authorities in the legal system would have officially mentioned Ivanka Trump's name seriously. But that was actually the story broke by the New York Times. But now we've been actually recognizing that because of the tips given by the New York Times investigative journalism. The New York Southern District Office officially opens up a serious investigation into Donald Trump's mishandling of the tax deduction in connection with Ivanka Trump's consulting firm. This is likely to be a ghost paper firm because she was also carrying multiple hats in and outside the White House. So she was a part of the White House because there was an official title given to her. So she was actually receiving taxpayers' money as a remuneration. That's also true. And she was also, meanwhile, simultaneously taking and occupying a place in the Trump International Organization. So there are multiple hats that she truly carried throughout Donald Trump's presidency. So it would be very interesting. But, the actual trace was, conducted because the amount of money was equally matching. The money Donald Trump allegedly paid for this anonymous consulting firm was equally matching the sum that was given out to Ivanka Trump's firm. In the first place, Donald Trump named this company as a third party, non-affiliated with the Trump International Organization in an effort to obtain the tax deductions. In that way, it's deductible. If you are actually hiring independent and non-connected counterpart as a consulting agency for business advice, then your company can obtain a slight amount of tax returns in the name of tax deduction because that's a subject to deduction. It's a deductible. That's a fine. But the problem is, it was actually, to encourage more of a hirings outside the company by seeking professional or profits and health from different disciplines. But this is not actually in a way that should be used to fatten of one's wallets. That's not right. This is a really typical misconstrual of the tax law by penetrating into the loopholes. So one needs to plug the hole if there is any reform. There should be a thorough inquiry by tracing down the connection between the alleged third-party consulting company and the actual corporation which hires that. There should be investigation into that. There should be probe into that. One should actually conduct a scrutiny to find out the real connection in between. That's what it is about. The insurance of fraud and the certification scheme, and also tax evasion and tax avoidance. This is also part of the criminal investigation, and there are also claims concerning his fraudulent tactics to jack up the values and estimates of his wealth. Even though most of his business was sustained by the extended credit, he actually borrowed the money. He took out a loan. He actually scouted investors from foreign nations, abusing his power while he's in office. And this type of deceitful trials are also now very controversial because, he actually lured the people into mirage because that was not solidly founded business model. And that's really a wrongful tactic of fooling other people. It's similar to racketeering. Because you've been actually abusing your power and pumping money into your shabby business for a while. Just simply it's really not really necessarily racketeering, but it's more like Ponzi scheme. You really have no substantial business model that might be sustainable and reliable for a while. There's nothing permanent, but there should be, there should be certain security to guarantee the sustainability of the business, right? But you don't really have that kind of fundamentals. But you just simply scout and recruit more people. You just actually, and tease another people. It's really like the corridors. If one passes by and bring another people, then they would actually pump money into the business. You've been actually, letting them take their turns by renewing the amount of capital in the business. At least, to have your business appear or seem to be in a perfect form or in shape, but that is not what it is supposed to be. It's really similar to Ponzi scheme, a little bit, because he's been actually also blamed for having fooled many of the future investors by lying about or beautifying or airbrushing the future perspective of his business in order to recruit more investors, in order to actually bring more seed money. Eventually, that would actually, the whole business model or the whole blueprint of a future business was nothing but a hoax built upon a shabby debts, right? So it's really like in a castle, building a castle in the sky. Nothing was fundamental for bringing more foreign capital into the business. If this maturity would have come up, then you need to actually find another source to pull the plug on that, so you can actually be at least, free for a while, because you have no debt to pay off. You can have a liquidity because you actually, have another people who might actually pad the bill, who might actually, pay the price. So, they've been actually taking their turns. They've been actually repetitively repeating this type of course. So he's been also under suspicion of inflating his wealth in order to make his business model more attractive. Huh, that's interesting. That's typical Donald Trump.